In this world, there are many constants. The speed of light, acceleration of gravity, and Toddifons being a racist. The last one has been a running joke in the Arknights community and, sadly, has not been expanded by Hypergriff. Despite that, she is actually a genius and does not give a damn to others' opinions. For example, Toddifons' military didn't allow her to change course from CQC to artillery despite many threats of dropping out. So she studied the course on her own, passed the final exam, and left the school. What a Chad move. So I was wondering, how does her no bullshit attitude translate into her combat? And is she worth building? Toddifons, aka Iron Throat, Bloodawed. I thought French pronunciation is fucked up, but Welsh is a different level. Anyway, Toddifons is a 5-star Besieger sniper. Snipers in this archetype prioritize enemies with the heaviest weight. Their base attack is some of the highest among other snipers, losing only to Deadeye snipers. Her attack interval, however, was quite long, sitting at 2.4 seconds, making her class the 3rd slowest snipers. One interesting fact I noticed is that all Besiegers operators have weapons rivaling the size of Arian's forehead, which might explain why their attack interval takes business days. Toddifons in particular uses a siege crossbow meant for attacking nomadic cities. That is literally written in her file. Anyway, heavy enemies tend to have high defense, and due to Toddifons' slow attack interval, the enemies are likely to survive her normal attacks when they are not blocked. Lastly, Toddifons and other besiegers have pretty large range attack with a lot of coverage, but it makes them impossible to attack at close range. At the same time, this arrangement allows them to position away from front lines or able to attack hard to reach areas. Toddifons' talent, Fiery Instinct, allows her to deal more damage when attacking Sarkaz enemies. This is the source of her racism meme, Ground Zero. One thing to keep in mind though is that most Sarkaz have weight 2, which means she will not prioritize them most of the time, except for a few elite ones like Centurion, Grudge Bearers, Chaincaster, and Scourger. But later in the story, starting around chapter 10, Sarkaz with weight 3 and above starts to appear more often. So Toddifons' talent usage really depends on whether you want her to fight Sarkaz soldiers or Sarkaz wizards with black magic. Toddifons' talent is quite important to her kit, and you do miss out on a lot of damage potential if you don't take advantage of it. Interestingly, Toddifons' beef with the Sarkaz is documented in her files, but only briefly touched upon. Sarkaz beef aside, I kinda miss the days where talent descriptions were short and simple. And before we move on to the skills, if you enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to give it a like. Toddifons' first skill, Signal Arrow, marks an enemy, prioritizing the Sarkaz ones. When marked, enemies lose up to 30% of their defense and increase their taunt level. She only marks the first enemy in her range and lasts for the entire duration of the skill or until the target dies. The mark also overrides shield guard taunts, so everyone will prioritize the marked enemy set by Toddifons over the shield guards. The skill also has a pretty good rotation with relatively cheap SP cost. The main usage is to prioritize your attack to a heavier and more dangerous enemy, which tends to have higher defense, and snipers would be able to take great advantage of this debuff. Sometimes though, it could backfire. If an operator is not equipped to take on heavy enemies, it won't do much damage. If you do succeed in killing the marked enemy, it does not refresh to look for a new one, and therefore you lose the defense buff. Toddifons still gets the attack buff, but her next skill has a much better attack buff. Overall, skill 1 has a niche mechanic and can be finicky sometimes. Skill 2, Portable Fortcracker Arrows. Fucking hell, that's a terrible name. You could have named it Dragonfire Arrows or something like that. Anyway, skill 2 fires fire arrows that deal up to 240% of Toddifons' attack as physical damage upon impact. After a short delay, the arrow explodes and deal additional but weaker AoE damage. One thing to note is that skill 2 uses the ammo system, and Toddifons have 10 shots. It can be deactivated anytime, which you can use to manage your timing to work around the really high SP cost of this skill. It is a good thing that her skill 2 uses ammo, because when using the traditional time-based skill, it would be wasted on Toddifons' winding up animation, which increased to 3.12 seconds with this skill activated. On the damage side, skill 2 delivers a lot more damage per hit than skill 1 thanks to that initial AoE explosion. The first damage multiplier combined with her talent delivers a good amount of damage to tear through high defense of Sarkaz enemies. And without the talent, it still works really well as a normal AoE attack. However, the follow-up explosion after the big one barely does any damage, and it's pretty negligible against high defense enemies. One downside of this skill is of course the increased attack interval, which compromises Toddifons' DPS, but the focus with this skill is purely delivering a shitload of damage per shot, not how fast. In a nutshell, skill 2 has a straightforward mechanic, is a lot more powerful, and if you ignore the weak AoE explosion, it's a pretty great skill all around. For mastery priority, I think you should go for skill 2. It has much better mastery gains. A 30% increase in attack multiplier with a slight reduction of SP cost. In addition to that, skill 2 does a better job at disposing your enemies. If skill 1 was able to refresh its marker and therefore applying the defense debuff more than once per activation, it would have been a massive selling point for this skill and potentially worth the M6 mastery. Toddifons' module increases her attack to 115% when attacking enemies with weight value of 3 or greater. At higher levels, the module increases her talent modifier. One could say that her racism against the Sarkaz gets stronger as you upgrade her module. This improved modifier is nice, somewhat compensating her lack of damage against non-Sarkaz enemies. And in general, heavy enemies are generally more common, so I think she would benefit greatly with this upgrade. So, should you build Toddifons? Yes, if you are fighting a lot of Sarkaz. As I ponder about Toddifons, I'm starting to think that her situation is kind of similar to that of Lapland. Her kit is very specific to a certain situation. You can still use her in other stages, but she won't be as good. On the bright side though, we are encountering more and more Sarkaz in the later chapters, from 10 onwards, and that might present some opportunities for our red-haired Sarkaz hater. So if you like an interesting playstyle and want to make your hatred towards the Sarkaz loud and clear, Toddifons is the perfect operator for you. Yes, she has flaws, but a good Docta can work around that. So, I want to know your opinion. What do you think of Toddifons? That's all for this video. Give it a like if you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!